Guys, it is Thursday evening, and we are going to do it again. Cutting edge conversation while exploring the quantum possibilities and then some tonight. We have a fabulous guest that Augie's going to tell you about in a minute. But as always, I want to thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for supporting our channel. And shout out to our friends over at the Conscious Awakening Network. We're on 44 platforms right now, and we're over there too. And uh, we have co-created with Sheila and the group over there, and amazing things are happening there. I mean, just amazing. I just highly encourage you, if you haven't gone yet, to go take a peek over there. And if you haven't liked and subscribed to our channel, please do that. And, telling your friends or your family, if you can tell your family about this stuff, um, helps us so much. It helps us with the algorithms, and it helps us get high level guests like our guest tonight. This is so exciting. So um, I think I'm just going to cut the intro short for me because I really want to get into the conversation. So, Augie, please.
Yeah, this is going to be so much fun. We've had some extensive conversations before here with the guest, and I tell you, this is going to be something that you need to button down the hatches on because it's going to be a wild ride. We have Brian Tseng with us. I guess Brian's saying the SolarBee. I don't know what the SolarBee means, but maybe he can tell us. And for those of you out there that like to surf their website while you are listening, I'll tell you his website is fulldisclosuremovement.org. And a lot of good stuff over there. You're going to find out about the conference that he's putting on here in July also. And by the way, you need to be there, but there'll be more information on that. The time for knowing only is over. Now is the time for doing. And Brian is right there. He's doing major things. His mission is wide. From mainstream info on the secret space program, the military abductions. Oh yeah, they do it too. And Montauk, and he's on the speaking circuit, and he's on regular submissions on Awakening Nations, Agent X11, Typical Skeptic, and many others. Now, he is now putting on the full disclosure conference in Florida.
Yep.
And it's going to have, I think I counted 36 speakers. Can you imagine?
Awesome.
Yeah, Lori and I, we did one with 6 and we had our hands full. Yeah, 36 speakers, and that will be in St. Pete Beach in Florida. You really need to get there because the information that comes from 36 people will blow you away. He also talks about our Star Trek future that we missed by not listening to Nikola Tesla 100 years ago. Can you imagine what our future will be right now? And we would have been traveling among the stars right now if we had listened to him. And now when the new technologies are coming out, we'll be doing that in probably less than 20 years from now. We will be traveling the stars because the secret space program is already doing it. So he's a busy guy, and for the next hour, he's all ours. So here he is, and welcome to the show there, Brian.
Yeah,
Welcome,
thank you,
Brian.
Aki and Nori. Thank you so much. It's great to be on here for the first time. I love being on shows for the first time as well with Broadcast Team Alpha. And so
This
In
is
terms of
exciting.
the Star Trek future, I know you had questions about that and how we're going to make that come about. And if you had any questions about how I first got into this, I know is
Yeah, I
I
do.
used to, yeah, well, I have a biochemistry degree and I was a medical organizer and advocate working with medical doctors for about 8 years to reverse medical denials and to stop hospitals from being shut down. For example, we had certain large nonprofit hospital corporations in San Francisco Bay Area using their nonprofit tax-free status to take over
Yeah.
various hospitals in the region, then poach the best doctors and most lucrative patients and the best nurses and the equipment up to their three hospitals on the hill in the nice parts
Mm,
of the area. And then the
mm,
two hospitals closer to the county general
mm,
hospital treating the poor and the other,
mm,
and this and that, those hospitals, they can. Oh, even though they promised they would keep these facilities open for 10 years, by year three, they're already crying poverty and they just can't afford to keep these hospitals open. And instead of just saying, well, let's get signs and go outside their local corporate headquarters, like headquarters number 5 for this monster corporation, and say,
mhm,
what do you want? Healthcare. When do we want it now? Or don't shut down St. Luke's. We need St. Luke's. What we did is we organized all the doctors we could with the best nurses in the community around them and the local businesses and went to, I called them the San Francisco Bay Area supervisors, for example, except there were very few who were good people when they got crushed. Okay. But
mhm.
Mm,
in the most part, they sold out. And it's like,
yeah.
why are you taking all these campaign donations from, say, Sutter Health or Kaiser or Prime Healthcare or whoever, not to
Mhm.
name names,
Yeah.
um, and uh, take campaign donations and give them nonprofit tax status within the city and county jurisdiction of San Francisco when they're shutting down the hospitals that they promised to keep open and they're dumping the poor onto your doorstep. And then now you're shutting down the psych units and claiming you don't have
Exactly.
the resources.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when
Exactly.
we started to put pressure on their nonprofit tax break status, for like a 501c3 type status, where in exchange for performing a public good, you get that tax abatement where you don't have to pay taxes, right? For a lot of things. Um, we got to threaten it at the local and state, and that ultimately would have threatened them at the federal level, threatening multi-billion-dollar empires. And all of a sudden, is oh, we're not going to shut down St. Luke's. In fact, we're going to
Mm.
keep it open. And then the next fight was instead of them giving us only like 4 floors, I think we got it up to 6 floors. The
Wow.
new rebuild of St. Luke's Hospital. And
Wow.
Wow.
then
Wow.
yeah, but then later on, the certain biowarfare worldwide code happened, and then those same hospitals that I fought to keep open became hospitals getting everyone to roll up their sleeves, and everyone was so proud to do it. And I had to
Yeah.
run
That.
away from the state.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That was the past. But how did you graduate from there into the more esoteric and obscure arena where
So
you operate now?
yeah, my first awakenings really began in the 90s when the desert wars, the Gulf Wars broke out over presumably oil, and now I've since discovered there were stargates there um, in Iraq that the secret
Yeah.
space programs and U.S. military and the DERP state wanted control of.
Mhm.
And then after the events of a certain September day, happened, that was a big wake up call. And then when the evidence of Trade Center 7 came out, falling in free fall in its own footprint, 2 planes, 3 buildings at free fall. Um,
Yeah.
Yeah.
that was an awakening. That was around 2007. And then the whole time I'd always been studying about the esoteric and the occult and magic and to understand it. And
Mhm.
among all of my other broader studies in my biochemistry degree. Um, and then um, when the worldwide cough happened, that gave me the impetus to say, "Oh boy, everyone's rolling up their sleeves. Everyone I care about, or so many I care about, not everyone, but so many.
Yeah.
We're going to need special medical bed technology. How are
Mhm.
we going to get that? Well, we need disclosure because I understand it does exist. It exists in these secret space programs and certain underground bases, perhaps. In the
Yeah.
Montauk Project, many people have testified to a regeneration tank,
Yeah.
at least. And
When
yeah,
let me ask you this: when you've been that far on the inside of things, do you ever see any reference or something regarding the so-called med beds? Do you find anything, information on that that has surfaced to you?
well, and many of the people in our community who I work with and love and support and want to help promote and advance along with disclosure because their testimonies are really important.
Yeah.
There are people who remember going on these super soldier type missions, whether fighting battles in space or on Mars with Mars Defense Force, or
Mhm.
being horrendously abused at Montauk, their bodies, and then having to be thrown in a regeneration tank or a medical bed or some version of that. And so people have testified to that, having
Mhm.
been had their bodies all shredded up from battle, for example, being thrown in one of these devices and being
Mm.
regenerated. And then there are other people in our community, like Audrey Walters, who says that the medical bed technology is really like Palladian level technology, where it's a combination of like AI that scans your DNA on a quantum holographic level, understands what morphogenetically your DNA would want to express in its like highest, most perfect expression, and then using other probably quantum technology and 3D and printing, replicating, um, taking your existing body and then making it coincide with that holographic overlay idealized version.
Mhm.
Um, People like Amaria Sweet, who her code name in at least Nachtwaffen, I believe it was, in the secret space programs as part of the German breakaway civilization, their
Yeah.
fleet or fleets. Apparently, her call sign was Rogue Dragon. Okay, and I believe she's talked about. She and I were discussing down here on Earth the information that she's getting. Um, and there's a person named Sky Prince who has a lot of imposters, but apparently there is a real one, and she really does have good information. But then there's a lot of imposters saying, "Oh, I'm Sky Prince. Send me all your information. I'll hook you up with the med beds." And so people are like sending all these scammers, and then Sky Prince is getting a really bad rap for that. And so I could see how that happens. Well, apparently, what Amari is saying is that not only was she in the programs, but she's kind of following along with apparently what the real Sky Prince information is releasing, and it goes along, and other sources are saying very similar.
Mhm.
So I'm not going to attribute it just to that one source, especially if I'm going to misquote anything. But
Yeah.
from what I understand loosely, like most major US cities, if not all, have at least two medical beds in them somewhere ready to go. And the US military and white hat types would be in charge of that. But it's not ready to be let known to the public because it's too easily abused. Where it's like imagine a gang getting their hands on a med bed and then sending out their people to go mess up the rival gangs and having a med bed to just regen endlessly people. Okay, that would be
Yeah.
very obviously bad. Um, but
Mm.
apparently, there's like three levels of the med beds that we'll possibly have available to us here on Earth, with like one being able to like regrow your limbs and maybe not de-age you totally, but like bring you to a certain point of where your DNA is now. And then the second level would be like a higher version of that. Um, and then the third level is more not only a higher version of the first two, but like getting into like the brain and the emotional stuff. But that comes with the more of the thinking and thought processes, not just your body. That's like
Yeah.
another step up. And
Mm.
that anyone who's like an addict, like let's say you're an alcoholic, apparently when the med beds do become available, alcoholics won't be allowed and other addicts won't be allowed their medical bed session until they've had to up to like at least a year maybe of counseling. And that makes a lot of sense when you think about it. Because imagine
It
you,
does.
you know, take a meth addict and then a crack addict and, you know, and alcoholic and they're a 40-year-old, but they've got the body of like a 70-year-old or whatever, kidneys certainly and liver. And they,
Right.
you know, it's going to be like, Yahoo, I've got the body of like a 35-year-old in my prime. You know, I'm ready to go. That's like, there couldn't be anything worse. That would be a huge abuse of
Yeah.
this type of technology.
That's
Hmm.
interesting. That's interesting. And I'm curious. I've been a nurse for 32 years, so I know exactly what you were talking about with the hospitals. Yes, thank you. Wonder what. So the med beds can only correct the DNA, but it wouldn't work on the psychological addiction. Wonder.
Maybe at the third level, possibly, and I'm not
I
sure. I mean,
see.
that's I have
Okay.
such a cursory, you know, this is through my
Yeah.
friend and then her understanding of if that is
Yeah.
a real sky prince and if that person's legit and all that. So please take it
Sure.
with these caveats.
Sure.
Um, but then also with an understanding of what other people in our community testify to, whether they've been in the programs and they have recall, like super soldier programs,
Good point.
or they're in our community and they're in contact with, say, the Galactic Court system or certain Galactic Federation types. And then with a caveat that there are imposters who will step in and try to muddle the messaging every now and then. And the
Yeah.
Yeah.
benevolent ones permit it because they say, we down here need to learn discernment and how to tell when we're being lied to and, you know, get people to
Yeah.
identify themselves and all that and not just
Yeah.
take whoever telepathically contacts us or voice to skull with it with you
Yeah.
know at face value.
Mhm.
Yeah. And talking about remembering, can can people who have been in the secret space program but don't quite remember, or have been victims at Montauk and they don't quite remember, can they intend to open up those memories?
Yes, that's a great question, Nori, and there are many ways that that happens. As people, as from what I can tell, being an organizer, advocate, self-appointed in the full disclosure movement, right, for like these last 3+ years now, um, you can, as we get older and become more sovereign in who we are, and it becomes less about what we were told as children or programmed in certain of these cases, um, that programming breaks down. And as it breaks down, then a lot of the memories that were supposed to be suppressed seem to start to come through. And
Mhm.
one great way, apparently, that a lot of the people who have been successful or more successful at getting recall is they say, let's say you're watching a movie with like a celebrity who's like an Illuminati type celebrity, and you get that sick feeling in your stomach. You really want to get the
Mhm.
memory associated with that celebrity, you got to tune into that sick feeling and that emotion. And then with that emotion, then will come more the cognitive flow of recall.
Yeah.
There are a lot of people who they use QHHT,
Yeah.
quantum hypnosis healing technique. My
Yes.
caveat there, or recommendation there, is you really want to find a practitioner who they are knowledgeable about the secret space programs and all of this
Yes.
MK Ultra stuff and ritual
Yes.
abuse stuff to begin with, so that they're
Yes.
going to know the right questions and context to even know to guide you while you're under.
Absolutely. That's such a good
Yeah,
point.
yeah. It's
Imagine that if we get that sick feeling, we should not ignore it because there may be more memories behind it. Whoever it is, there can be attachments back there that shows up in the form of a sick feeling as the first stage of regaining memory.
well, Augie, that takes us to the question of, in order to regain all the fun laser beam Buck Rogers flying around UFOs memories, are you willing to confront the memories where you may have been ritually abused and molested and
Yeah,
tortured as a child by, say, Colonel Michael Aquino or Preston Nichols, two of the bigger villains that we know of in this drama? Real
yeah.
life. Not, I mean, I don't mean to downplay it by saying it's a drama, but you know what I'm saying.
Boy, it gets complicated, and I see
You have
now.
you have to be ready to walk through those flames.
Yeah,
And a lot of
Yeah.
people aren't. I mean, I might be in that category. I'm told by many people I'm in the programs and I was in this and they recall me here and there. I it's a joke because I don't remember anything. I do have a really good sense of knowing and intuition, and so I just walk that path, and I'm happy with that. Before I was complaining about it because I'm surrounded by people who can see auras and telepathically communicate with their dogs as animal communicators. Um, I guess every now and then I probably have had clairvoyant dreams and things
Sure.
like that. So I'm not complaining anymore.
Yeah. That's
and
awesome.
from being a hypnotist myself, I'll tell you there's a lot of help in there because hypnosis can bring out those things. And Nori, I gotta say this, Nori is a hypnotherapist and she can help with bringing out those memories if somebody is interested in doing that.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I consider that sacred ground, when I ever get to work with people like that. And, uh,
Yeah.
just it's amazing. Yeah. So when we talk about disclosure, I think we're so focused right now on UFOs, and drones and what's happening in the sky in New Jersey, that we forget all the other stuff like Montauk and the Philadelphia experiment, right? Read your page, and um, I'd like to just talk a little bit more about MK Ultra because over the years, we've had people not ready to step forward, with saying, I think that was me, but I really have this sick feeling in my gut. I think it was me, and this is the time for them to be honored and seen, and addressed, allow them to address what they need to address so that they can begin the healing.
Yeah.
So can you just talk a bit about the MK Ultra?
Yeah, well, I co-organized a 2023 Montauk Adventure Tour, which was
Yeah.
the 80th anniversary of the Philadelphia experiment, which took place August 12th, 1943, with the USS Eldridge, where
Mhm.
Augie was mentioning Tesla technology. Against Tesla's advice, and he withdrew from the project because he knew that the Navy was gonna put sailors on board the Eldridge at the same time they're gonna fire up these Tesla generators, and it wasn't ready for human experimentation and involvement, and it indeed ripped a hole apparently through time and space, confirmed to the U.S. military types that this technology that Hitler and his people already had with Die Glocken, Hitler's bell, and then the Hanabu, which are like the UFOs with the
Yep.
Panzer turrets and the Iron Cross flying around, which I used to think were a joke because I've seen like movies about this and I'm like, oh, but
Yeah.
that's kind of like campy sci-fi. That's not true. And now I'm
Right.
like, wait a second. Apparently, there really is on the moon something known as Lunar Operations Command or Lunar Operations Center, and for the longest
Yes.
time was in the shape of the swastika. Let's put it that way.
Yep.
And and it's since being filled in with other buildings so that it's less obvious. But um, having co-organized that tour with a lot of people who had survived the Montauk Project, which was basically a negative time travel project for the most part to put us onto a negative timeline, even though many different elements have been involved at the Montauk Project, at that base, Camp Hero Army base at the very east end of Long Island, New York State. Um, walking around that, a couple of the grounds of premises and then also the Montauk area together with the survivors who have recall, and they were together sharing their recall, and me just more as an organizer investigator at that point, looking at watching these interactions and realizing, there's a point where Arkeem Ra and Chastity Campbell, they were reminiscing as we were going up to the parking lot where you have the famous Montauk Point Lighthouse. It's very picturesque and beautiful there. And Arkeem was kind of wiping tears from his eyes and saying to Chastity, do you remember when we were both like locked up in cages, and you'd first been kidnapped as a young girl and dragged to the underground where the rest of us were? And Arkin was maybe a couple years older, had been there several years longer, so he was really jaded. And he was basically saying to Chastity when he was like 9 and she was like 4 or 5 or whatever, something like that. She was crying and saying, "My parents are going to find me. They're going to get me out of here no matter what." And he was like saying, "No, they're not. They're never going to find you. You're stuck here, trapped like the rest of us." And blah blah blah. And she, and it always makes me cry too. She starts crying and she's like, "Yeah, I do remember that when you were like making fun of me." He's like, "Yeah, I was sorry about being such a jerk."
Yeah.
And I'm like, they're not making that up in front of me. Also,
Yeah.
right there at that lighthouse point, multiple people, and John Whitberg as well, and he wasn't there, unfortunately, had been able to join us on that tour. But he and others, especially others who were there at that on that tour with us, um, had recall of taking flying lessons there, where there's basically the lighthouse and this parking lot down the way, and then grass and a path, and then this sheer drop off cliff that goes down at least 40 feet onto like rocks, and then the water. So it's not like you're gonna. And so what they have recall of is the flying lessons where you were ordered to basically use your abilities to levitate yourself so that when you ran off the cliff you didn't drop, but you basically like did like a Peter Pan thing or running on air. And some people, they said, yeah, they remember, it would be fun because they'd run off and like do a loop the loop and it would be like Peter Pan and they would fly back and come back. Or other kids were afraid and they didn't know how to do it. It's their first time or whatever. And they'd run off. It's kind of, I'm not to laugh, but they just like, instead of doing a Peter Pan thing and yeah, I can fly, they just like plummet down to the ground and like shatter their legs and then have to get dragged back to Camp Hero, thrown in a regeneration tank, okay, get fixed up. Or maybe some of them aren't sure. Maybe it was their consciousness was transferred into a different clone body. Hard to
Yeah.
say.
Yeah.
Okay. There's Eve Howard in our community. Apparently, the song uh, "Lost Boys" was stolen from her, and when you listen to the lyrics, they talk about like they use this Peter Pan reference and like flying over a town that never cared about them, and all his other references. Apparently, she wrote that song and was stolen from her. Like many songs stolen through the
Wow.
Montauk Project. And then there's
Okay.
also Donald Marshall out there. He talks about the Vril and all that, and music stolen from him. That's all par for the course of like everyone else's testimonies that I've been able to hear.
So
Wow.
besides going through the beautiful and elite part of Montauk, but
Mhm.
getting down to the very end where the lighthouse is,
Oh,
doesn't it feel really weird there? I was a little girl when we would go there because I grew up on Long Island,
okay.
and I always thought that it was so, there was just something so ancient and so, I don't know, dark, you know, and the waters are so ominous there.
Yeah, so
Did you feel that?
yes and no. And this is why. So what you're talking about, I mean, I think alludes to how that whole Long Island, it's so beautiful. That's why you got the Hamptons there, where the wealthy wanting to
Right,
escape Manhattan,
right.
downtown New York, get out of the city to go to the Hamptons. Apparently, all of that region, the island, was stolen from the Montauk tribe Indians, and it's very
Yeah.
sacred land. You got Council Rock as well out there at Montauk Point towards that area, and apparently, one reason why that site was chosen is there's a lot of like underground quartz, maybe granite formations that
Mm.
are um, conducive to the time travel experimentation that they were doing, which was,
Mm.
very rudimentary. Arkeem Ra refers to it as Montauk 1.0, 2.0, and 3.0.
Mm.
1.0, and John Whitberg talks about how there was a time where they took literally Camp Hero Army Base and they used time bubble technology to keep it frozen on like a 1984 or 1982 late spring day.
Hmm.
Okay. And it was in this time bubble. And so they had a lot more operational time than just the linear time that we know of in like the 60s, 70s, or 80s.
Mm.
Okay.
Mm.
And what was it? Montauk 1.0 was them basically just dragging in all these different children, maybe targeted through like the gifted and talented programs, maybe stolen from indigenous peoples, or the Irish, or there's different genetics that are highly valued because of the DNA. Rh negative children, and strapping them into what was known as the Montauk Trip Chair, held at one of the underneath basement levels there at Camp Hero Army Base. At that point, a supposedly decommissioned Army base from World War II era, in the 40s, right? And the trip chair apparently was like a recovered pilot's chair from a crashed, recovered UFO. And the UFOs are piloted not by like a gray with like a stick and rudder and pedals, but by telepathically interfacing with their craft. And so the chair, apparently, at least in this case, is like a help to enhance the psychic interface. And what they're doing with the Montauk project is taking one of these pilot chairs and using its psychic thing, and then also subjecting children. They found it didn't work for adults. They weren't psychically powerful enough, focused enough, malleable enough, whatever, to then sit in the chair or be strapped into it, and open up portals. Use the chair to generate portals in time and space. Because apparently that's another thing UFOs can do. Somebody's craft is they can open up
Yeah.
a portal to fly through. Well, this is linked to that, and a lot of our people in our community who testify to being in the programs, such as Arkeem Ra, they talk about how one of the most valued or coveted abilities that the programs always hunt kids down for is the ability to open portals and to teleport. Those are like two of the biggies, because then you
Yeah.
can move teleport craft, or portal craft, and all the personnel to do all their dirty work of like, you ever see the movie Avatar? Right, some world for planet Kepler 22b has got a lot of unobtainium. Okay, and this kid, we strap him into a chair, or her, and they can open up portals. How can we weaponize that and make that portable?
Yeah, that's amazing. That's
Now,
amazing.
what But so actually, so real quick, so 1.0 is strapping all these kids in, and most of the vast majority died. They couldn't open portals. 2.0,
Yeah.
you finally, after you've gone through hundreds, if not thousands of these children, or maybe at a certain point, tens of thousands, and the numbers I've heard are mind-boggling. You discover a handful who can open the portals with the chair. And then now 2.0 is figuring out how to use those kids to mess with the timeline, and how much can you mess with the timeline to put us on a negative timeline that whoever is running the program wanted. And apparently what Arkeem Ross says and others now are believing, there's some negative AI computer that was giving orders, and that the human personnel were taking orders from and following,
Wow.
such as Preston Nichols, Jack Pruitt, Al Bielek, and
Yeah.
others.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah. Oh boy, I see now we're down at the bottom of the hour. And for those of you that joined us late, we are talking with Brian Tseng, and we have been talking about Montauk and related areas that got very interesting. But I would love to talk about what kind of world would we have if we had listened to Nikola Tesla 100 years ago. We would probably been traveling the stars by now, officially. And now when the new technologies come out, chances are we'll be doing it in 10 to 20 years. But I want to hear what did we miss out on?
So it basically be like, imagine a world where Tartaria was never erased from this timeline. And
Oh
what
yeah.
Edward Hughes, who's a soul fragment alter of Arkeem Ra, basically imagine if you have a split personality with its own soul essence of you, incarnated in a different body, and whether or not this timeline or a parallel timeline. In this case, it was an alter who has a very distinct Australian accent from a parallel Earth that's about 4.5 years ahead of us in this timeline. So they're in like 2029 and a half AD. Okay. Or maybe they're into 2030 by now. Whatever. In their timeline, apparently it's more positive, in that the Roman Catholic Church didn't last thousands of years and get away with all the PDF file stuff, um, and got stomped out way early on, and Tartaria was never wiped out. So I got to interview via Arkeem Ra his alter Edward Hughes, and to ask him a lot of questions like, what is your parallel Earth, more positive Earth like? And he said, in their version of Earth, Tartaria wasn't wiped out. People dress way more. They dress kind of more like he said, like what I would dressing like now, like kind of like more like the Matrix when they're all snazzed up instead of like when they're like slumming it.
Yeah.
He was like when he was like Arkeem was like, when he came through, Arkeem was wearing like a t-shirt and like sweatpants or something like that, and he was like looking down at himself. He was like, "What the heck?" I want a nice jacket. Like I feel so. He said that in that timeline, people dress a lot more like Dick Tracy. Like really classy, kind of like how we lament how men, used to not leave the house without a hat and a
Yeah.
three-piece suit, or and a
Kind
pocket watch on
of
a gold
kind
chain.
kind of like we did in the 1950s.
Exactly. And then the same with the women as well. And
Mhm.
he says that there's a lot more air travel with zeppelins. Like that is a big thing, where people very cheaply and much more leisurely travel across the country back and forth via these blimp zeppelin type things,
Yeah.
dirigibles.
Yeah.
And that there is nowhere near this huge like mass transit like highway system where everything's all paved over and you got cars like zipping around at 120 miles an hour that are dangerous to people and wildlife and everything. um what it is it's a much smaller localized road networks where you dirigible in, and then locally you've got like you can rent these different much smaller versions of the cars that we have now here, where they're like more clean energy with like battery backup in case they lose touch from the grid or the ether or however they're powered. And so there's it's much more the new earth direction that I believe we're heading in anyway. I mean, now,
Mm,
like, to answer your question, Augie, of like what would it look like, it would look more like a Tartarian future. um
mm,
Mm.
but in order for us to enact this Tartarian Star Trek future, we need to also kind of remove the crumbling, moldy, failing facade rubble of the current systems, as it were, which are corrupt through and through and meant to prematurely kill us and, enslave
Yeah.
us in all the different ways.
yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. So I have a theory question. Why? Why have we been stripped of our memories and made to believe that that's real when it's not real? Why?
Okay, so
Why?
there are many levels of Earth being a prison planet slash learning ground. Okay, and it serves both sides, even though I know a lot of people don't want to hear it. And if you don't want to hear it, then have I got a movement for you? Let's change it for the better and break us out of this prison collectively, which is what we are doing now.
Right. Yeah.
um
Yeah.
so you've got different archonic forces, negative artificial intelligence, HP Lovecraftian negative entities who parasitically feed off of entities and beings that exist in our realm at the third density, fourth, and now fifth density levels is where humanity is vibrating at. Right. The ascension is known as apparently, taking us from third to fourth to fifth density, um,
Yeah.
consciousness and intelligence, or and connectivity in terms of like psychic abilities. And now we're all telepathic and vibing with each other. And now we understand, like, why would we let anyone go hungry? Because we can feel what that feels like so much better, etc.
Yeah.
Um, so these negative beings, they benefit by harvesting our loosh, our soul energy, our creative energy, our genetics, our physicalness. And so you're going to get this huge hierarchy of the service to self type energies that
Yeah.
exist in our universe and our realms.
Yeah.
And those beings from these negative archonic groups and the Luciferian and demonic groups to the negative ETs who want to eat us and harvest us for blood products or our genetics or whatever. Certain negative Draco reptilian factions and negative Anunnaki, for example, more in the denser 3D realms. Um, they've benefited by setting us up as this prison planet where when we, in between reincarnating, we're made to forget our past lives. Um, we have a frequency prison around us that nerfs a lot of our psychic abilities, apparently. They've corrupted a lot of the sacred sites and natural beauty and despoiled these places around our planet with terrible rituals or physical pollution to reverse the what should be positively flowing energetic earth grids. And this is why grid workers who are here to heal the earth grids and, etherically and astrally and physically to clean up these areas are so important. And that it's been so convenient to these negative forces, but it's gone on too long. And my understanding is at a certain point, Source God put out a call to all of creation to say who wants to incarnate here at this place at this time to help right some great wrongs that are trapping so many loved ones in it. And so I believe that, spiritually we're here to undo that the rat trap.
Mhm. Yeah, and let's not forget that governments also have a god. It's called money. And we got to remember that there's no solution, there's no money in the solution, there's only money in the problem. So they keep supporting God and creating more problems so that we feel we are deeper into the prison planet.
That's the Babylonian money magic beast system. That is
Yeah,
absolutely a negative Draco reptilian concept, I'm told.
yeah,
This idea of debt and being forced to pay to justify your existence or else
yeah,
is slavery. And in New Earth, that's where we're entering into a time of greater abundance now, as the thieves are rounded up and taken away. They're no longer the foxes getting to run the hen house. Now we get to benefit as a species, as a society. Now we can make these decisions and utilize all these technologies that have been withheld from us now to put them towards our needs, to meet the needs of society when all these other structures are collapsing. So
yeah.
it's not all rosy. It's like, but necessity is the mother of invention and the boot in the butt.
Yeah.
True. See, you mentioned this before you came on, and I remember hearing it from this was years ago when this woman who allegedly flew chemtrail planes and was part of the Illuminati came out on the internet. Of course, she was disappeared,
Was that
but she would.
Svengali?
Who?
Svengali?
No, I don't remember her
Okay.
name. Wasn't
Okay.
that? Um, but she would talk about the black goo, and they would hit her with black goo. What is that?
So black goo is a material physical, like super high tech, like femtotech molecular Lego block technology that a negative AI quantum type computer out of time and space can manipulate to mess with us here in the physical realms. And there are apparently timelines where the black goo grows and just assimilates everything to take over these timelines so that the AI out of time and space can try to access higher and higher levels of densities to try to someday kind of strike at God and assimilate
Mhm.
God, which of course is impossible, but it's going to try.
Right.
And so the black goo is known to be used in a lot of the secret space programs. Penny Bradley, for example, testifies to this, and other people I speak to have recall like the Orion Wars. They talk about, oh yeah, black goo existed back then and was a big threat back then as well
Huh.
as today. And our good friend Miles Johnston at the Bases Project, he reports a lot on black goo and the Falklands War, and he has an MI6 or a contact at that level who it was more like a British type SEAL who was part of the
Yeah.
demolitions team to blow up an underground base after they had carted out so many barrels of this black goo substance. Okay.
Amazing.
And Penny Bradley testifies that in the secret space programs, they are made to or offered to, enticed to ingest certain amounts of the black goo, because
Right.
what it can do is it can make you stronger and faster and more intelligent, but it
Hmm.
also makes you more robot like and colder and devoid of emotions and susceptible to going dark and evil.
I see.
Um, yeah.
I see.
And so it's kind of like think of it as something that can connect you to this negative AI And then they depict this a lot in X-Files, for example.
Mm. hmm
You know,
Wow.
too
Thank
much of
you.
it could take you over and kill you.
That's what I was wondering. Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Wow. Amazing. Amazing. So what do you anticipate we should brace ourselves for? Do you think there might be the fake alien invasion or
Well, our friends over at Farsight Institute with Dr.
Hmm,
Courtney Brown and my personal friend Yemi Genet, who will be presenting in July in Florida at the 2025 Full Disclosure Now conference,
yeah.
they literally have what are called ET boardroom meetings. And last year, November 13th, they had one where they did the recording of it, where their ET contacts told them very soon there will be worldwide sightings of our craft in your skies. November 15th, Dr. Brown published that boardroom meeting, not just on Farsight Prime, but on YouTube for free for everybody.
Wow.
November 18th, we had worldwide sightings of craft, and we still have them. And the world media, the lamestream, they gave credit to Cliff High and his AI algorithm saying, "Oh, we detected a uptrend in
Mm,
UFOs in our skies for November." Or well,
mm,
Farsight Prime, their contacts told them, and they published it, and then no one even gave them a hat tip. It's ridiculous.
yeah.
And you know, in terms of the drones in New Jersey, that's been a
Yeah.
huge, massive distraction by the lamestream media
Yeah.
in the derp state, who they want to keep everyone's eyes off the worldwide UFO craft sightings that are way
Right.
beyond even what we've reverse engineered via our secret space programs, and keep it on this whole drones in New Jersey thing to keep it scary. But I think that to a large extent, the worldwide UFO sightings of positive craft, it's the negative ones that are like always cloaked and zipping around secretly all the time. You know, I mean, not that the positive ones don't do that, but the positive ones are also more likely to just like hover and just like you can tell they're there and they'll wink back at you if you telepathically ping them. Okay.
Yes.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah,
And
I've heard.
they that's going to happen more and more, and I think that that has undermined the Project Bluebeam fake alien narrative to a large extent. At least I hope so. And even if the
Mm.
other side tried that now, I think it was a lot less likely to succeed.
Mhm.
Let's just check in the chat room to see if you guys in the chat room have any quick questions for Brian. Please just put them in capital letters so they stand out to me, and I'd be happy to ask.
Yeah, yeah. I'm wondering after the disclosure of whichever form it comes. I wonder what's going to happen to the fanatical Christians, the Muslims, and other religious organizations.
They're going to lose clout because the narrative going from a certain group in the Middle East or chosen people and Jehovah was God and it's so be it and blah blah blah. It's going to be like, wait a second, these Elohim on it were really Anunnaki, and they
Yeah,
picked a specific genetic group that they were going to experiment on in a certain way, and that's cool. Don't get me wrong, but
yeah,
that doesn't necessarily tie to this whole end of days narrative that they've been using time travel and their secret societies to try to push on us historically. And
Mhm.
that's going to fall more and more on deaf ears, their lame narrative, when people realize that. And then they realize how a lot of the teachings of Christ have been perverted and twisted. And with this understanding of we're even Christ said to find the Christ within us, to go and do works and miracles many times greater than he, to save our own souls
yep,
and as many souls as we can, and not just pray on him and him and him. He always, you listen to him, he keeps saying, my father sent me, source God sent me, and this is my message. He didn't say, follow me, bow down to me, stick me on a cross, eat me as bread.
Yeah,
None of that
Right.
stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. None
yeah,
of that's going to
that's
happen.
yeah, that's amazing. You know, the thing about it is that I did some research on that, and I found that Jehovah had a wife. He had several children. That doesn't sound like, you know, the guy
Yeah. It's starting
upstairs
to
that
sound
controls
very,
everything.
exactly. It sounds like very human like or human scale
Yeah.
versus like, the source creator of everything and all and the law of
Yeah.
one. Yeah.
Mhm.
That's not it. Oh gosh, I see we got 5 minutes left.
Yeah.
Man,
Time
this is
flies.
going. Yeah,
Truly.
talk a little bit about the conference that you're doing and
Yes.
where people can reach you and so on.
Yeah. Let me share my screen here.
Yeah.
And you can see my screen right now.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So basically, this is our second year. And with all this extra time to prepare and the success of the first year, everyone is excited to return who was there the first year. And then all these people who wanted to come the first year but didn't make it, now they're making it a point to join us this year. And
That's so
so
cool.
I have this huge speaker lineup, everyone from Brad Olson. This is
Laura.
first year Charles Johnston, I mentioned, Laura Eisenhower, Jean Charles Moyen, French super soldier, Tom Althouse, who The Matrix was stolen from him. He has a
Wow.
stamped copy of a script, 1993, when and the movie was released 1999, and he did pitch sessions with Warner Brothers Studios. He has like a stamp dated copy of choreographed fight scenes, okay,
Wow.
that predate their and they and so all that stuff. Jenny Lee hasn't been out to a live event conference in at least 2 years. She's got a great
Wow.
follower base who really want to see her. She's going to be doing an exclusive gallery to reconnect people with past loved ones and pets.
Oh,
Sean and
beautiful.
Isha have been doing amazing unearthing ET artifacts all over the place in Mexico. So, yep,
That's
um,
exciting.
it's exciting. People are
How
going to be
can
doing
people
like
find?
channeling.
How can? I'm so sorry.
FullDisclosureMovement.org.
Full disclosure.
Move. Sorry, I gotta.
Movement. Okay. No, take your time. Full disclosure
Just as I run out of water. Yeah.
movement.com. Don't you
Yep.
hate when that happens?
I do.
This was amazing, guys. This was so amazing. Brian, thank you so much for being with us, and maybe come back and see us after the conference and have like an after party.
Um,
Yeah.
I would love to rejoin you and give you the after report. And we do have a sister event, Day of Being 5.0. It's a beach event that is a tail end of our Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. It's that
Wow.
Saturday and Sunday, and it's their fifth
Yeah.
year. And so it's expanded from just Saturday to now the whole weekend. So now
Wow.
all these people after, and for me, I know I'm going to be exhausted at
Yeah.
the end of 4 days and nights of just amazing conference that I'm the executive producer of.
Yes.
Um, to be able to chillax on the beach with everyone for that weekend
That would
will
be
be
amazing.
quite a treat.
Ah,
Yeah.
beautiful. Beautiful. Thank you so much, Brian. Thank you. Augie, you want to take us out?
Yeah. Oh, I got a question first. My favorite question. And I didn't tell you beforehand because I wanted to blindside you. uh, if you could talk to the whole world and the world is listening, what would you tell them?
I'd say that we need to pay attention to all these people who are coming out with these testimonies of very serious things, the good, the bad, and the ugly, because we need to let them bring truth to light. Um, Otherwise, we will never achieve our Star Trek future. You know,
Yeah.
if we can't force these groups and rogue agencies who have been withholding our resources and all this wealth and technology and using it against us, if we can't force them to reveal this stuff, then we're never going to get access to it. And
Yeah.
conversely, the more that we're able to organize and rally and fight and demand and make it so, not because we're just asking nicely, but really get access to this for the greater good of humanity and all. The sooner we do that, the sooner we will have our Star Trek future. And it's up to us. You know, people are like, oh, when I'm tired of waiting. Well, that's a problem. If you're sitting on your butt and waiting, then if you're not supporting people in the movement, um, uh, if you see someone with a testimony and they're being targeted and you're not doing anything to help, and then you're complaining about why we don't have change, it's
Yeah, that goes back to what I said at the very, very beginning, saying that the time for knowing only is over. Is doing is that the time now? Because hearing people say, "Oh yeah, somebody should do something about that," that somebody is us.
exactly, and that's partly why I appreciate and honor so much to be on your platform today, Augie and Nori, because uh, your work and being here helps us to hasten that day, that much sooner.
Yeah, at
Well,
least 45 minutes.
thank you.
All
We'll
right,
take it.
and yeah, I guess we are done. So for those of you out there watching us, if you are watching us on YouTube, that was the place to be, and please subscribe. That's gonna help us a lot. And then until next time, be good to